Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivanadhari Jana Vallabha Girivanadhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivanadhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivanadhari Yasodanandana Brajagana Ranjana Nana Brajagana Ranjana Yasodanandana Brajagana Ranjana Nana Brajagana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivanadhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivanadhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivanadhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivanadhari Yasodanandana Brajagana Ranjana Yasodanandana Brajagana Ranjana Yasodanandana Brajagana Ranjana Yasodanandana Brajagana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Vishnupad Paramahamsa Pakavacharya Satarya Satashishi Mahadev Divine Grade H.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Ananta Gauda Vaishnavinda Ki Namacharya Srila Haryas Thakur Ki Prem Sakoshi Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasudhi Gauda Bhaktavinda Ki ISKCON founder Srila Prabhupada Ki Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shamakun Radhakun Giri Govardhan Ki Vrindavan Dham Ki Mayapur Dham Ki Navadvip Dham Ki Jamuna Mai Ki Ganga Mai Ki Tulsi Devi Ki Bhakta Devi Ki Shri Radha Golokananda Ki Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Gaura Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya 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 Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. So we're continuing our reading from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya 9, and we're on text 293. We've got about another 360, I think, the end of this chapter, text 360 something. So we're having a discussion here. Mahaprabhu's on his travels to South India, and he just met with Sri Rangapuri. He was invited to a home, which is often done. Some Brahmin will invite him to come to his house. But then at the moment he heard that Sri Rangapuri was close by, he immediately got up and left to go meet this devotee. And so they embraced one another, and he told him about his relationship with Ishwarapuri. And they both experienced ecstatic symptoms. So 293. In this way, they discussed topics about Lord Krishna continually for 5 to 7 days. Out of curiosity, Sri Rangapuri asked Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu about his birthplace, and the Lord informed him that it was in Navadvip Dham. Sri Rangapuri had formerly gone to Navadvip with Madhavendra Puri, and he therefore remembered the incidents that had taken place there. As soon as Sri Rangapuri recalled Navadvip, he also recalled accompanying Sri Madhavendra Puri to the house of Jagannath Mishra, where Rangapuri had taken lunch. He even remembered the taste of an unprecedented curry made of banana flowers. So, there were a number of devotees that were disciples. Srivas Thakur, Advaita Acharya, and none of these elder associates. I'm assuming maybe Jagannath Mishra, I don't know for sure. But these were all disciples of Madhavendra Puri and others. Pundarik Vijayanidhi. Sri Rangapuri is also remembered the wife of Jagannath Mishra. She was very devoted and chaste. As for her affection, she was exactly like the mother of the universe. He also remembered how she, Jagannath Mishra's wife, Sachimata, was expert in cooking. He recalled that she was very affectionate toward the sannyasis and fed them exactly like her own sons. Sri Rangapuri also remembered that one of her deserving sons had accepted the renounced order at a very young age. His name was Sankarayana. Sri Rangapuri informed Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that the sannyas name Sankarayana had attained perfection in the holy place Pundarpura. Pundarpura. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's elder brother was named Vishwarup. This is purport from Prabhupada. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's elder brother was named Vishwarup. He left home before Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and accepted the sannyas order under the name of Sankara Rayana, of Ranya Swami. He traveled all over the country and finally went to Pundarpura, where he passed away after attaining perfection. In other words, he entered the spiritual world after giving up his mortal body at Pundarapura. Sri Rangapuri, disciple of Sri Madhavendra Puri and godbrother of Ishwarapuri disclosed this important news to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, in my previous ashram, Sankar Arayana was my brother, and Jagat Mishri was my father. It's kind of interesting. He's talking about, now that he's sannyas, this is when he was in the, connected with the family. After finishing his talks with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Sri Rangapura started for Dwarka Dham. After Sri Rangapura departed for Dwarka, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu remained with the Brahmin at Pundarpura for 4 more days. He took his bath in the Bhima River and visited the temple of Vititala. So we can say how he takes up his time. He's got 2 years, roughly 18 months to 2 years traveling. Here's a minimum of a week. He was right here. Often, a lot of places he stayed, a week, 10 days, not to mention 4 months at Chaturmas. At least one time, could have been twice, but at least once. So the time, this looks like 4 more days, initially a week, so he's 11, 12 days just right here. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went to the bank of the river, of the Krishna Vena River, Venva River, where he visited many holy places and temples of various gods. Purport: this river is a branch of the river Krishna. It is said that Thakur Bilamangala resided on the banks of this river, which is also called the Vena, the Vani, and the Sina, and the Bhima. So, Obaganda Timaranda Shyagananjana Shalakya Chakram Tajmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Bilamangala Thakur, we know the story from him. This is one of the books that he wrote, was the Krishna Karnamrita, where he explains the Spruti, getting a vision of Krishna and how this happens. It's not a small book. It's Prabhupada said it's a elevated book in the sense that it talks about the intimacy of his relationship with Krishna and how he actually saw Krishna revealed himself to him throughout in the course of his sadhana. The interesting thing is, we know the story that he was initially attached to a prostitute, right? So one night was even stormed. He goes to see this prostitute, and she's kind of, if you had this much devotion or attraction to Krishna, you'd be a pure devotee. She kind of pointed out the situation. So he realized it was like a reality check for him. It's wow. It's true. I'm in such a degraded situation. So he left. So he's traveling, trying to get to Vrindavan, the holy places. And at one place he stops at this devotee's house, this Brahmin's house, and his wife there, and they were going to feed him. But then he had lusty desires for the Brahmin's wife. His lusty desires were still there. That's just, it takes time for us we have to constantly clean ourselves. The chanting is the only process in Kali Yuga of how we can do that. Of course, this is way before Lord Chaitanya, because Lord Chaitanya used to read this book, Krishna Karnamrita. This is one of the books that Lord Chaitanya read. There's 3 main ones he read. Govinda Gita. Krishna Karnamrita. It's one of the books that Lord Chaitanya would relish and read. So he actually asked that, if he could have a relationship with the wife, and asked her to come and asked her to take her hairpin out of her hair. And then he blinded himself with that. So here he is, he's blind. He continues on to Vrindavan. He becomes a great devotee. But then he sees Krishna. So then if he's blind, how does he see Krishna? Right? This is Krishna's mercy. Because and Sanatana Goswami gets into this in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita. that these visions, like the Sprutis, they're not external visions, they're internal visions. When Dhruva saw, Sanatana Goswami explains this, when Dhruva went to the forest and he meditated, and then Vishnu appeared. It's not like anybody else standing around to see Vishnu. Only because of his love and his purity, Krishna revealed himself to him. So what he saw was inside his heart. Krishna revealed himself. So this is the Sprutis. This happens. Same with Bilamangala Thakur. So he explains the Sprutis in that way, Sanatana Goswami. That these are... so he says that, at first, you're confused. Am I really possibly seeing Krishna? Especially in the beginning. It's a confused state. And then there's a clearing state. And then there's you see Krishna. There's the purified state, when it happens. So he wrote other books, commentaries. He's one of our acharyas that we take instructions from, because Lord Chaitanya very much relished this one book, Krishna Karnamrita, which dealt directly with his, Smriti with Krishna. It's not a book about himself. He didn't talk about his diary. These things are told by other of the devotees. Okay, so we're at text 305. The Brahmin community there was composed of pure devotees. They regularly studied a book entitled Krishna Karnamrita, which was composed by Bilamangala Thakur. Okay, so a little ahead of myself, but here we go. This book was purport. This book composed by Bilamangala Thakur and 112 verses. Not a very big book. We have it. Bhanu Swami has translated this book. There are 2 or 3 other books bearing the same name. And there are also 2 commentaries on Bilamangala's book. One commentary was written by Krishna Das, Kaviraj Goswami, and the other by Chaitanya Das Goswami. 306. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was very pleased to hear the book Krishna Karnamrita, and with great eagerness he had it copied and took it with him. So here's another one. We had one of the other ones that we've already mentioned in this travel. We had the Brahma Samhita. There's another one about the Kurma that he had copied. One who constantly reads this Krishna Karnamrita can fully understand the beauty and melodious taste of the pastimes of Lord Krishna. The Brahma Samhita and Krishna Karnamrita were 2 books that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu considered to be the most valuable jewels. Therefore, he took them with him on his return trip. The other book he gave this Brahmin. He met this Brahmin, and then he traveled to see Ram's holy places of Ram, Ayodhya, and then got that book, and then come back and gave it to that Brahmin. Text 310. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu next arrived at the banks of the river Tapi. After bathing there, he went to Mahishmatipura. While there, he saw many holy places on the banks of the river Narmada. Purport. The river Tapi is also known as Tapti. The river's source is a mountain called Mulati, and the river flows westward through the state of Saurashtra and into the Arabian Sea. Mahishmatipur, Maheshwar, is mentioned in the Mahabharata in connection with Sahadev's victory. Sahadev, the youngest brother of the Pandavas, conquered that part of the country, as stated in the Mahabharata. Tato Ranyaya Padaya Purnim Mahishmati Yayao. Tatra Nilena Rajan Sa Chakre Yudhadham Narasha Bahai. After acquiring jewels, Sahadev went to the city of Mahishmati, where he fought with a king called Nila. all the Pandavas, when they do a Rajastula sacrifice, there's a victory horse that's sent out. A particular horse is from the heavenly planets. It's not a native to this. And there's a plaque or thing on it, challenging anybody, that let this horse go free if you don't challenge, like Yudhisthira or the emperor. And then if someone challenges that, then all the Pandavas went in different directions. Like here, Sahadev went to this part of India, and then he had to take on the king of that, obviously, and he defeated him. This is how the emperor spread. Of course, this goes all throughout Southeast Asia too. I mean, it's pretty big. India, Bharatvarsha was really, really much bigger than it's the current geographical boundaries we see now. Okay, so 3:11. Next, the Lord next arrived at Dhanustirtha, where he took his bath in the river Nirindaya. He then arrived at Rashyamukha mountain and then went to Dandakaranya. Purport. According to some opinions, Rashyamukha is a chain of mountains beginning at the village of Hampigram in the district of Bellary. The mountain chain begins along the bank of the river Tungabhadra, which gradually reaches the state of Hyderabad. According to other opinions, this hill is situated in Madhya Pradesh, and bears the present name of Rampa. Dandakaranya is a spacious tract of land which begins north of Khandesha and extends up to the southern Ahmad Nagara to Nasika and Aurangabad. The Godavari River flows through this tract of land, and there is a great forest there where Lord Ramchandra lived. 3:12. Within the Dandakaranya forest, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then visited a place called Saptatala. The 7 palm trees there were very old, very bulky, and very high. Purport. The name Saptatala is mentioned in the Kichkinidaya section of the Ramayana and is described in the 11th and 12th chapters of this section. Text 3:13. Upon seeing the 7 palm trees, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu embraced them. As a result, they all returned to Vaikuntha Loka, the spiritual world. After the 7 palm trees had departed for Vaikuntha, everyone was astonished to see that they were gone. The people began to say, this sannyasi called Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu must be an incarnation of Lord Ramchandra. So these trees were mentioned in the Ramayana. Now that was the previous kalpas, not even the Satya was the previous 4 yugas, not this set of yugas. So that's a pretty long time, these trees. Okay, 3:14. After the 7 palm, 3:15. Only Lord Ramchandra has the power to send 7 palm trees to the spiritual Vaikuntha planets. Eventually, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu arrived at a lake known as Pampa, where he took his bath. He then went to the place called Panchavati, where he rested. According to some, the old name of Tungabhadra River was Pampa. According to others, Vijayanagar, the capital of the state, is known as Pampatirtha. According to still others, the lake near Anaguni is in the direction of Hyderabad is Pampa Sarovia. The river Tungabhadra also flows through here. There are many different opinions about the lake called Pampa Sarovia. So we have 3 different here. In the Chaitanya Bhagavad, Bhaktisiddhanta often does that, and he sometimes will talk about there are versions of the Chaitanya Bhagavat that has an additional verse in it. This is how intelligent he was, that he was very familiar with different versions of the Chaitanya Bhagavat. And because these were all handwritten manuscripts. Something might have got left out, something might have got added. And they come, and so they're different locations. Okay, so 3:17. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then visited Nasika, where he saw the deity of Triambaka, Lord Shiva. He then went to Brahmagiri and then to Kushavarta, the source of the river Godavari. Kushavarta is located in the western Ghata at Sayadri. It is near Nasika, a holy place. But according to some, it is situated in the valley of Vidna. 3:18. After visiting many other holy places, the Lord went to Sapta Godavari, and at last he returned to Vijayanagara. Purport. In this way, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu traveled from the source of the Godavari River and eventually visited the northern side of Hyderabad state. He finally arrived at the state of Kalinga. 3:19. When Ramananda Roy heard Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's arrival, he was very pleased, and he immediately went to see him. So this is the second time they come together and visit. When Ramananda Roy fell flat, touching the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Lord immediately raised him to his feet, and embraced him. In great ecstasy, great ecstatic love, they both began to cry, and thus their minds were slackened. After some time, they regained their senses and sat down to discuss various topics. Prabhupada was talking that there are actually 4 people that we shouldn't try to imitate, Vaishnavas. Ramananda Roy is one of them. I mean, he was able to describe, Prabhupada talked about, like in a play, he was able to bathe young girls and not get agitated. He was able to and set up this play. Another one is Devananda Pandit. Devananda Pandit was able to, these are all pure devotees of the Lord, but he was critical. He's not described as a fault finder, but he would even would criticize Lord Chaitanya if he saw any kind of deviation anywhere. But there was a relationship that they had on a spiritual level that there was no offense between him and Lord Chaitanya. Lord Chaitanya at one point asked him to go to Navadvip. He asked Nityananda to go to Navadvip. He asked Govinda to eventually go to Navadvip towards the later part of his pastimes, because certain people he couldn't relish the intimacy of his Radharani when this internal mood started to enhance itself. So also Haridas Thakur. We can't imitate Haridas Thakur and his ability to chant. So, let me think of the 4th one. So Devananda Pandit, Ramananda Roy, Haridas Thakur, and okay, maybe it'll come to me in the course of reading. I had it and I lost it. So those 4 people shouldn't point out that these are, they engage in activities that it's really actually impossible for us to follow. It's impossible. It would just be a cheating, or it's like a sahajya, try to pretend to be like. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave Ramananda Roy a vivid description of his travels to the holy places and told him how he had acquired the 2 books named Krishna Karnamrita and Brahma Samhita. The Lord delivered the books to Ramananda Roy. The Lord said, "Whatever you have told me about the devotional service is supported by these 2 books." Ramananda Roy was very happy to receive these books. He tasted their contents along with the Lord and made a copy of each. News spread in the village of Vijayanagara about the arrival of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and everyone came to see him at once. After seeing the people who gathered there, Sri Ramananda Roy returned to his own home. At noon, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu got up to take his lunch. Sri Ramananda Roy returned at night, and he and the Lord discussed topics concerning Krishna. Thus they passed the night. Sri Ramananda Roy and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu discussed Krishna day and night, and thus they passed from 5 to 7 days in great happiness. Ramananda Roy said, "My dear Lord, with your permission, I have already written a letter to the king with great humility. The king has already given me an order to return to Jagannath Puri, and I am making an arrangement to do this." Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then said, "It is for this purpose alone that I have returned. I want to take you with me to Jagannath Puri." Ramananda Roy said, "My dear Lord, it is better that you proceed to Jagannath Puri alone, because with me there will be many horses, elephants, and soldiers, all roaring tumultuously." So he was a minister, he had these of the king. So therefore he had, when the king arrives, all his entourage arrives. He was part of his entourage, and similarly, there were a lot of those that were connected to each minister. I shall make arrangements within 10 days. Following you, I shall go to Nakala without delay. Giving orders to Ramananda Roy to come to Nakala, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu departed for Jagannath Puri with great pleasure. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu returned by the same road he had formerly taken to Vijayanagara, and all the Vaishnavas along the way saw him again. Wherever Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went, the holy name of Sri Hari was vibrated. Seeing this, the Lord became very happy. When the Lord reached Alanath, he sent his assistant Krishna Das ahead to call for Nityananda Prabhu and the other personal associates. As soon as Nityananda Prabhu received the news of the arrival of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he immediately got up and started out to see him. Indeed, he was very impatient in his great ecstasy. Sri Nityananda, Roy, Jagadananda, Damodar Pandit, and Mukunda all became ecstatic in their happiness, and dancing along the way they went to see the Lord. Gopinath Acharya also went in a very happy mood. They all went to meet the Lord, and they finally contacted him on the way. The Lord was also filled with ecstatic love, and he embraced them all. Out of their love, they began to cry with pleasure. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya also went to see the Lord with great pleasure, and he met him on the beach of the sea. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya fell down at the lotus feet of the Lord, and the Lord pulled him up and embraced him. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya cried in great ecstatic love. Then the Lord, accompanied by them all, went to the temple of Jagannath. Due to ecstatic love experienced upon visiting Lord Jagannath, inundations of trembling, perspiration, tears, and jubilation swept the body of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. In ecstatic love, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu danced and chanted. At that time, all the attendants and the priests came to offer him a garland and remnants of Lord Jagannath's food. Purport. Those who are priests engaged in Lord Jagannath's service are called pandas or panditas, and they were all Brahmins. The attendants who look after the temple, the attendants who looked after the temple's external affairs are called palas. The priests and attendants together went to see Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu became patient after receiving the garland and prasadam of Lord Jagannath. All the servants of Lord Jagannath met Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu with great pleasure. After Kashi Mishra came and fell down at the lotus feet of the Lord, and the Lord respectfully embraced him. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya then took the Lord with him to his home, saying, "Today's luncheon will be at my home." And this way he invited the Lord. It's described in the Chaitanya Bhagavat that Lord Chaitanya will not take lunch, only take lunch in the house of Lakeshvara. Right? Lakeshvara is like, what, 100,000 lakhs? Lakesh, 100,000. So, Lakeshvara is someone who chants 100,000 names. Of course, when he was on the pilgrimage here, it's these Brahmins he took as a custom, and to give mercy to all the people in his South Indian tour, he spread his mercy. But in his residence here in Jagannath Puri, because everybody wanted him to take lunch at his house, Haribol Purva, Hare Krishna. So he had to set a standard. You know, that unless you're chanting 100,000 lakhs, he would not accept an offering. 100,000 names, not lakhs. 100,000. That's a lakh. 100,000. Huh? 64 rounds. Yeah, just a little more than 64 rounds. Not much more. So, so that standard was set by Lord Chaitanya. Lakeshwara, like now we call him a millionaire. Someone has $1 million. Lakeshwara back then was someone who had 100,000 lakhs, 100,000 rupees. That's the Lakeshwara. That's how they were very wealthy. But Lord Chaitanya applied it to those who chanted 100,000 names. They were the truly wealthy individuals who chanted Lord's name, different 100,000 names of the Lord. Okay, so we continue. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya then took the Lord with him to his home, saying, "Today's luncheon will be at my home." And this way he invited the Lord. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya brought various types of food remnants that had been left by Lord Jagannath. He brought all kinds of cakes and condensed milk preparations. Accompanying him by his associates, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya's house and took his noon lunch there. After offering food to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya made him lie down to rest, and he personally began to massage the legs of the Lord. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then sent Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya to take his lunch, and the Lord remained that night in his home just to please him. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his personal associates remained with Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. They all stayed awake the entire night, and as the Lord spoke of his pilgrimage. The Lord told Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, "I have traveled to many holy places, but I cannot find a Vaishnav as good as you anywhere." Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu continued, "I received much pleasure from the talks of Ramananda Roy." The Bhattacharya replied, "For this reason, I requested that you meet him." Purport. Sri Chaitanya Chandrodaya, beginning with the 8th act, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that Sarvabhauma, "I have traveled to many holy places, but I cannot find a Vaishnava as good as you anywhere. However, I must admit that Ramananda Roy is wonderful." Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya replies, "My dear Lord, I requested that you see him." Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then says, "There are, of course, many Vaishnavas in these holy places, and most of them worship Lord Narayan. Others who are called Tattvavadis are also Lakshmi Narayan worshippers, but they do not belong to the pure Vaishnav cult. There are many worshippers of Lord Shiva, and there are also many atheists. Regardless, my dear Bhattacharya, I very much like Ramananda Roy and his opinions." So that was Prabhupada's quoting that from the book Sri Chaitanya Chandrodaya. Actually, we also have that book available now for devotees to read. Panu Swami is diligently revealing all this nectar for us to dive into. All glories to his service. Thus, I have ended my narration about Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pilgrimage, describing it in brief. It cannot be described very broadly. Purport. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur points out that in the 74th verse of this chapter, it is stated that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu visited the temple of Siyali Bhairavi. But actually, at Siyali, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu visited the temple of Sri Bhu Varaha, near Siyali and Chimbandrabam. There is a temple known as Sri Musnam. In this temple, there is a deity of Sri Bhu Varaha. In the jurisdiction of Chindambaram, there is a district known as Southern Arcata. The town of Siyali is in that district. There is a temple of Sri Bhu Varahadev nearby, not Bhairavavi Dev. This is Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's conclusion. So this is an instant where you might make a correction in the purport, but you don't change the book. See, and this is done. This is the standard that's set. You don't go back and change what the Acharya says. You might make some footnote about it. That's the proper way that should be done, the etiquette. This is also in the Chaitanya Bhagavat. Bhaktisiddhanta, he'll make footnotes. They don't change or eliminate or attack. He'll make, this word, it should be this word. That's a corrupted form of, because the Muslims had invaded, so their language kind of got a little corrupted. It got some type of Muslim terminology also impregnated into the Bengali language, certain terms. So he would point these things out. Okay, we're almost done. So let's just quickly go to that 74th verse. Okay, so it's just a description of where Lord Chaitanya went. Okay. So we're finishing up this chapter. The pastimes of Lord Chaitanya are unlimited. No one can properly describe his activities, yet I make the attempt out of greed. Thus, this but reveals my shamelessness. Whoever hears of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pilgrimage to various holy places attains the riches of very deep ecstatic love. Purport. And we're not going to finish this purport, but we'll read it. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur remarks, the impersonalists imagine some forms of the absolute truth through the direct perception of their senses. The impersonalists worship such imaginary forms, but neither Srimad Bhagavatam nor Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepts this sense gratification worship to be out of any spiritual significance. The Mayavadis imagine themselves to be the Supreme. They imagine that the Supreme has no personal form and that all his forms are imaginary, like the will-o'-the-wisp or a flower in the sky. Both Mayavadis and those who imagine forms of God are misguided. According to them, worship of the deity or any other form of the Lord is a result of the conditioned soul's illusion. However, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu confirms the conclusion of Srimad Bhagavatam on the strength of his philosophy of Achintya Tattva. That philosophy holds that the Supreme Lord is simultaneously one with and different from his creation. That is to say, that there is unity in diversity. In this way, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu proved the impotence of the fruitive workers, speculative, empiric philosophers, and mystic yogis. The realization of such men is simply a waste of time and energy. To set the example, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu personally visited temples in various holy places. Wherever he visited, he immediately exhibited his ecstatic love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When a Vaishnava visits the temple of a demigod, his vision of that demigod is different from the vision of the impersonalists and Mayavadis. The Brahma Samhitas support this. A Vaishnava's visit to the temple of Lord Shiva, for example, is different from a non-devotee's visit. The non-devotees consider the deity of Lord Shiva an imaginary form because he ultimately thinks that the supreme absolute truth is void. However, a Vaishnava sees Lord Shiva as being simultaneously one and different from the Supreme Lord. In this regard, The example of milk and yogurt is given. Yogurt is actually nothing but milk, but in the same time, it is not milk. It is simultaneously one with the milk and yet different from it. This is the philosophy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and it is confirmed by Lord Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, text 4. Mat ya tata idam sarvam jagad ayakta murtidana. Mat stani sarva bhutani na chayam tesvavastati. By me and my unmanifested form, this entire universe is pervaded, but all beings are in me, but I am not in them. So we're going to stop right there. It's a good place to start. I'll mark that. And then continue that purport next Saturday. We're about halfway through it. I don't know if we can get through it or not, maybe. I don't hear the conch shell, but it's time. I will just wait. There it went. Okay. All right. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
Here's what I found.
What? Siri. Here's what I found. Siri. Jai.
Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Taksham Bharhavatam Samasitam Buddha Sundarangam Kandar Agom Vikamaniya Vishesha Shobha Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Andani Yasa Sakalen Priya Priti Manti Pasyanti Panti Kayanti Chiram Naganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadhu Jala Vigrahasya Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham
Chari Utajiva Olo Hari Hari Mukunda Murari Rama Krishna Hayagriva Hari Hari Mukunda Murari Rama Krishna Hayagriva Nashima Vamana Shrimurasudana Rajendra Nandana Shama Singhavamana Srimadhusudana Bhutana Gatana Aitava Satana Jaya Dasarati Rama Yashoda Dulala Govinda Gopala Vrindavana Purandara Gopi Priya Jana Radhika Ramana Bhuvana Sundara Bara Radhika Bhuvana Sundara Bara Ravana Dhakara Makana Kaskara Gopi Jana Bastari Dhakara Gopi Jana Vasari Vajra Rakala Gopa Vrindapala Chitari Bamshidari Rakala Gopa Vrindapala Chitari Bamshidari Yogindra Bandana Shri Nandanandana Raja Jana Bayahari Nandana Sri Nandanandana Nandana Bayahari Navina Nirada Rupa Manara Mohana Bamshi Bihari Nandana Kamsani Sudana Nikunjara Savilasi Kadamba Kanana Rasa Parayana Vrindavipina Nivasi Ananda Vardhana Prema Niketana Pula Shara Jojaka Kama Prema Niketana Pula Shara Jojaka Kama Gopana Gangana Chita Vinodana Samasta Guna Gana Dhamma Damuna Jivana Keli Karayana Manasa Chanda Chakora Namasudharasa Goa Krishna Jasa Rako Vachana Manamora Namasudharasa Goa Krishna Jasa Rako Vachana Manamora Baba Shesha Loka Provesha Nidachari Utajiva Shesha Loka Provesha Nidachari Hari Hari Mukunda Murari Rama Krishna Hayagriva Hari Mukunda Murari Rama Krishna Hayagriva Bolo Hari Hari Mukunda Murari Rama Krishna Hayagriva Hare Hare Mukunda Murari Rama Krishna Hayagriva Jaya Krishna Balaram Jaya Krishna Balaram Jaya Krishna Balaram Jaya Krishna Balaram Krishna Balaram Jaya Krishna Balaram Jaya Krishna Jaya Radha Shama Sundara Shama Sundara Radha Shama Sundara Shama Sundara Nitai Gaura Haribo 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo Haribo Nitai Gauranga Jaya Nitai Gauranga 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 Jaya Sachinandana Jaya Sachinandana Jaya Jaya Sachinandana Jaya Sachinandana Gaurari Jaya Sachinandana Jaya Radha Golokananda Radha Golokananda Radhe Radha Golokananda Radha Golokananda Jaya Radha Golokananda Radha Golokananda Shri Radhe Radha Golokananda Radha Golokananda Shri Radhe Jaya Radhe Jaya Radhe Jaya Radhe Jaya Shri Radhe Jaya Radhe Jaya Radhe Jaya Shri Radhe Jaya Giri Govardhan Jaya Giri Govardhan Jaya Giri Govardhan Jaya Shri Vrindavan Dham Jaya Giri Govardhan Jaya Giri Govardhan Jaya Shri Vrindavan Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada